Okay, moving on here to Chapter 23, War and Revolution. The war in this case is World War I. The revolution, the 1917 October Revolution in Russia. Section 1 is entitled The Road to World War I. And if the background looks familiar, I just found out that apparently Crash Course is doing European history videos this year. So look for some of those to start showing up. Okay, essential questions from Section 1 here is, how did the assassination of Archduke Francis Ferdinand lead to World War I? How did the system of alliances help cause the war? And why did Great Britain become involved in a war? And in doing this, we're actually going to look at a political cartoon that shows part of how that alliance system kicks in. Okay, getting started here with number 1. This is another name for a military draft, a practice that was established in most Western countries before 1914. That's conscription or military draft. Empire needs men. This is one for the British Empire. This is one for the French. Notice this one is actually targeting French-speaking Canadians. Come on over. In the first half of the 19th century, liberals believed that European states organized along national lines would create a peaceful Europe. But instead, this led to competition rather than cooperation, and that is true. And this is the map of Europe prior to World War I. Notice the big Austria-Hungarian Empire here, the large German Empire. Poland actually will come about later on. It's just being shown as sort of a region right now. Okay, the great powers of Europe were divided into which two loose alliances? Those are the Triple Alliance and the Triple Entente. Warsaw Pact and NATO were Cold War things. The Warsaw Pact has disappeared. The NATO alliance, or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, still exists. Okay, this is the alliances in 1914 when the wars get ready to start. You see Germany aligned with Austria-Hungary and Italy. That's the Central Powers. The Triple Entente was France, Great Britain, and Russia. And then Italy switched sides at the beginning of the war. Interesting enough. And the Ottoman Empire joins Germany and Austria-Hungary. Okay, moving on here. Number 4, the growth of nationalism in new countries in Europe meant that all ethnic groups had their own nation state. That is false. If you look here, this is a map that shows the countries, and then the coloring is showing ethnic groups, and you can clearly see these overlap many of the different countries. And the worst case option of this was in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Look at the sheer number of different ethnic groups: Germans, Hungarians, Czechs, Slovaks, Poles, Ukrainians, Slovenes, Croats, Serbs, Romanians, Italians, and Ladins. All kinds of ethnic groups there. Okay, this is the aggressive preparation for war. This is militarism, and not just European countries, but also the United States as well, which had a smaller military at the start of World War I, but they saw their military as a way to extend their might to get those imperial territories, which were seen as important to be seen as a powerful nation in the world. Number 6 here, which shows the correct size of the armies of major European countries from largest to smallest. It's Russia, then France and Germany, and Great Britain, Italy, and Austria-Hungary. Although it's funny because Austria-Hungary is the one who starts things going by threatening Serbia. I'm just going to show you, this is Scientific American. A little bit later in the year, it shows Russia still with the largest army, but a poorly equipped army, I should point out. Germany being shown here with more troops than France, but this is after the war has actually started, and so they've actually at the time the war starts, they're pretty similar. England jumps up very quickly. Despite the vast and complex plans for mobilizing millions of men and enormous supplies for war, military leaders were willing to alter their plans. They were not. Basically, complex plans like the Schlieffen Plan here were like, look, once we get this going, you can't stop this. This is, in fact, something that Tsar Nicholas II of Russia finds out when he mobilizes his troops, which is seen as an act of war. His cousin in Germany says, you sure you want to do that? We've got an alliance with Austria-Hungary. And he goes, oh, guys, slow down, stop. And the generals tell him, we can't. Once you start it, you can't stop it. Okay, which country was backed by Russia and sought to create a large independent Slavic state in the Balkans? That is Serbia. I kind of alluded to that already. Germany, Austria-Hungary. This is Serbia down here. Romania here. This is the Polish region of Russia, which is actually still part of Russia at the time. Okay, this is the process of assembling troops and making them actually ready for war. Not just having a big, military, but actually making them ready for war. This is mobilization. And the bad thing was that in 1914, mobilizing troops for war was the same as declaring war or actually invading. It's an act of war. Okay. At the time, however, everyone thought this was going to be a great thing. I mean, literally, we had women, giving guys, this is German ones, getting flowers as they go off to war. This happened in every European country. In fact, we even saw some more things happen in the United States, and we didn't join the war until after we'd seen 3 years of horror stories coming from the war. Okay, he was the Archduke of Austria. He was killed by a member of the Serbian terrorist organization that wanted to free Bosnia from Austria-Hungary. That is Francis Ferdinand. This is he and his wife, I believe, Sophia. This is actually taken the day that they were assassinated. This member of the Serbian terrorist organization that wanted to, this was the member who wanted to free Bosnia and who killed the Archduke. This is Gavrilo Princip, or Princip. I've heard it pronounced both ways. There are no photographs of this actually happening, and they're all drawings or paintings or renderings. This is the one I could find, though, that showed him wearing, the Archduke wearing the same hat that we actually saw in the photograph. Most of them showed it in a big plumed affair, which the photograph clearly showed he didn't have. Moving on, this Emperor of Germany is a guy who gave Austria-Hungary a blank check of support, saying, whatever happens, even if it matters, went to the length of a war between Austria-Hungary and Russia, we've got your back. That's part of our alliance. That's William II, or Kaiser Wilhelm II. This is Kaiser Wilhelm II here. He is actually half English, half German. His mother is English. Actually had a birth defect. His left arm is slightly shorter than his right, so you often see him posed like this, where his arm is in such a way that you can't actually see it, oftentimes resting on his sword, which kind of hides the fact that it is shorter. Here, by the way, he is with another one of his cousins. Not only is he a cousin to the King of England, he is actually a cousin to the the Tsar of Russia, Nicholas II. So that's the Kaiser on the left and the Tsar on the right. A Russian general told the Tsar they could not partially mobilize for war, and since their plans called for war against both Germany and Austria-Hungary, their full mobilization led to Germany first calling for Russia to halt mobilization and then declaring war on Russia on August 1st. That is true. They said, hey, can we just go to war against Austria-Hungary? And they said, we can't, because Germany's got an alliance with them. So our plans call for going to war against both. This is Nicholas here in the center with his generals. This is one of his most famous generals over here on his left-hand side. One problem with the alliance system was, in fact, as I mentioned earlier, that in 1914 mobilization was considered an act of war. That, of course, is true. And those alliances is that this is Serbia here. This is a political cartoon of the time saying, if you touch me, and he's being threatened here by Austria-Hungary. So if you move, okay, and then this is Russia saying, if you hit him, okay, and then here's the Kaiser saying, hey, it's my friend. And then we have the French back here and John Bull here representing the United Kingdom or Great Britain. This Russian Tsar called for partial mobilization of the Russian army against Austria-Hungary. That is Nicholas II, Tsar Nicholas II here of Russia. He is also a relative of Queen Victoria of England, who has since passed away at this time. Since Germany's war plan called for a two-front war with France and Russia, France declared war on Germany when Germany mobilized its troops. Again, mobilization being an act of war. That is not true. As soon as Germany mobilizes its troops to go against them, they declare war against France. Okay, so Germany declares war on Russia, first Russia fired, and then France mobilizing, and Germany declares war on them. Germany's plan to attack France included sending troops through this neutral country, Belgium. And if we're in the classroom, I'd be pointing out that the back corner with the flags and the line of Flanders is the Belgium corner of the room. Okay, this is part of their plan, is to sweep through Belgium up here. It was neutral because there's fortifications along the French-Germany border and avoiding those by going through a neutral country. They thought Belgium would let them. They don't. This plan works out pretty well. They don't get all the way into Paris, but it works so well they use it again in World War II. This German general's war plan called for a two-front war with France and Russia, as those countries had formed a military alliance. That is Alfred von Schlieffen, and that plan, what I've been pointing out to you, is called the Schlieffen Plan, or plan. Sorry, whenever I say Schlieffen, I just want to say Plan, which is the German pronunciation. Moving on here, Germany's war plan called for a two-front war again, with a holding pattern action against Russia, just to keep it in place, a quick defeat of France, and then we would turn and invade Russia. That doesn't quite work out for them, and they're stuck the entire war basically until 1917, when a two-front war. This two-front war, their goal is to a quick defeat of France. And I've got this actually on here incorrectly. That should be true. Sorry. What happens is they have a two-front war. Okay, the next credit question was, many historians use the mnemonic M.A.I.N to help students remember the main causes of World War I, what do each of the letters stand for? M for militarism, A for alliances, I for imperialism, which we've been talking about in the last chapter, and nationalism is our old friend, N. We're back from the heady days of the French Revolution. That's chapter 23, section 1, The Road to War.